With the Silence and the Fury DLC being announced just the other day, we know that we're getting 2 new legendary lords in Taurox for the Beastmen and Oxyotl for the Lizardmen. And this is a pretty unique one because Oxyotl has a very interesting lore. He's not necessarily bound to a very specific location like a lot of the other Lizardmen legendary lords. So in this video today, we're going to go over the lore for Oxyotl, talk a little bit about how he might possibly be brought into Total War Warhammer with this new DLC, and then go over some possible campaign starting locations because his lore might kind of throw this for a loop when it comes to the conventional starting location for a Lizardman Lord. But as always, guys, if you have not yet pre-ordered the DLC and you intend on doing so, please feel free to use the Nexus Store link in my description. It goes a long way to helping support the channel and to get a key directly from the developer. And as always, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It does help out any content creator you watch a ton. Let's dive in on the lore of Oxyotl. And as is customary, we're going to start off with the 8th edition Warhammer Army book for Oxyotl, He That Hunts Unseen. One of the rare breed of chameleon skinks, Oxyotl was already an accomplished hunter when chaos came to the world. He and his spawnkin mounted bold ambushes against the hordes, but were forced to retreat within the sacred walls of the temple city of Taurox, a host of greater demons nearly catching them before they could duck within the protection of the magical barriers created by the Slann. Yet that barrier crumbled before the chaos onslaught until the demons stalked the plazas and the Lizardman defense shrank back into the pyramid district. In a last effort for victory, the Slann mage priest Lord Oxyotl attempted to summon a nova blast of energy to banish the foe. He needed time to conjure the mystic forces to power the spell, however, and called upon his last surviving Saurus and Oxyotl and his chameleon skinks to protect him, buying precious moments while the ritual was completed. But alas, the fickle powers of chaos tricked Oxyotl, and he tapped too deeply into the howling winds of magic. Colossal energies spiraled out of control, ripping holes in the fabric of reality. The Slann and his last protectors were sucked into the realm of chaos. Taurox aged millennia in scant seconds, large portions of the city, along with all of its inhabitants, crumbling to dust. Oxyotl awoke to find himself in a living nightmare. He was surrounded by all manner of demons, many of which were feeding on the sprawling entrails of his lord. He was alone in a land of living shadows, untruths, and impossibilities. Luckily, his innate ability to blend in remained effective, despite the unnatural surroundings. Oxyotl was all but invisible, unnoticed by the creatures of that realm, although they detected him after a time. He survived the way he did in the jungle, by instincts and cunning. Oxyotl covered his scent against the demon hounds that tracked him by daubing himself in the blood of his pursuers. He ambushed mystic sentinels that lusted for his cold blood, and he willed himself to resist all temptations. The passage of time flows strangely within the realm of chaos. A year may pass in that twisted unreality, whilst centuries pass in the real world. Now, in a timeless torture, Oxyotl was forced to exist in the full horror of chaos. He glimpsed firsthand the fate of all the races of the world should the fight against chaos falter and their planet be overtaken by the dark gods. At last, after trials almost beyond enduring, Oxyotl found a path back to Lustria. He passed through fell places that he cannot recount to others or even himself for fear of going mad. He alone has discovered and walked through the fabled lost cities of the old ones, yet he tells no tales. Upon his return to Lustria, over 7,000 years had passed, and the Lizardman's realm had fallen low, while the lesser races had spread like plagues. Portents of demons returning and war eternal abound. Indeed, Oxyotl's own return is regarded as one such omen. It is unknown how Oxyotl escaped, for he dare not speak of it, and no Slann will read his mind, lest the taint of chaos remain within him. Yet Oxyotl has gathered others of his recently spawned kind and resumed the hunt, mustering his strength against the return of the hated foe. Now, as you can see here, Oxyotl's lore it's a little wide sweeping, right? Yeah, sure, it starts in Taurox, and from there it kind of goes all over the place, mainly, of course, in the realm of chaos, which I find particularly interesting as we're kind of ramping up into Total War Warhammer 3. In the Immortal Empires map, that's the map, of course, I've deemed for the Mortal Empires version of Total War Warhammer 3, Will we see Oxyotl starting in the realm of chaos, or even having some sort of influence on that realm of chaos? And I guess that's kind of a conversation we can have as a whole for the Silence and the Fury, because we're going to supposedly be getting some form of corn flavored, or at least speculatively corn flavored versions of Beastmen. So if we're already starting to see corn seep its way into Total War Warhammer 2, does that mean that Oxyotl will play some sort of role in Warhammer 3 as far as his starting location goes? In the end times, Oxyotl did not get really much page time, I guess you could say. We really only see him at the very kind of end of the story arc for the Lizardmen, when the Skaven deploy, the dreaded 13 blades to go and kill the Slann and kind of give the Skaven an upper hand. And Oxyotl is the one that single-handedly kills off each one of the 13. And that's really the only time we see him in the end times. So from there, we get very little lore outside of the 8th edition army book. And it is kind of interesting here how it does mention that he goes to the lost city of the old ones. And that's kind of an innocuous name. You're like, what the hell is that? Well, that is the lost city of the old ones that is in the hinterlands of Koresh. If you watched any of the lore videos for the fan-made hinterlands of Koresh lore, that is something they've actually baked into their lore, is talking about how Oxyotl was a part of those, not was a part of, but actually visited these lands, and how the Koreshi noticed him and they kind of drove him out of the lands, more or less, or he vanished into his chameleon-like nether. But he's the only individual to have gone there since it was ruled over by the Lizardmen, and now it's ruled over by the Koresh. So, well, at least in the fan-made lore. So it's a really kind of cool way to sprinkle this in here, as far as talking about that fan-made project with Koresh, the Realm of Chaos, and this DLC. So before we get into starting locations, we'll do that after this segment. Let's talk now about the rules here for Oxyotl. Now, from the 8th edition, we get your typical kind of basic chameleon stuff, right? He's aquatic, chameleon, cold-blooded, scaly skin, scout, sniper. He gets that stuff. But he also gets master predator. If Oxyotl remains stationary in his preceding movement phase, shots made from the golden blowpipe of Patui, that's his special weapon, in the shooting phase, wound automatically on any successful two-hit roll of 5 up. Now, I think this kind of goes without saying that he would have fire whilst moving and sniper, so he could stay quote unquote cloaked, stay quote unquote hidden while he's shooting. So I think that kind of goes without saying. But it would be interesting though if Master Predator embodied itself in Total War Warhammer, in that it gave him a range damage missile strength increase by a certain percent. Like, hey, if he's not moving, he gets plus 30%. Like, that's a little intense, but still, my point is, if rather than having this guy move around and shoot and do all that kind of action, if you kind of have him stationary, it would bring out more damage and kind of make him a little bit of a turret when it comes to him shooting down range with obviously what would be poison barb blowpipe shots. And on that note, let's talk about here the golden blowpipe of Patui. With just the lightest exhalation, this golden instrument of death blasts forth a hail of murderous darts. This is a missile weapon with the following profile. So it has a pretty limited range. It's definitely not AP, and it's got poison attacks and multiple shots. So here's how I could envision this, and I think it's pretty straightforward in just reading that lore blurb. Again, with this golden instrument of death blasts forth a hail of murderous darts. So here's what I think would be cool for his ability for Oxyotl, is he has a bound ability that essentially allows him to do a breath attack, a very short range breath attack. Let's just say 20-meter range breath attack. That I'm sorry, not breath attack, wind attack, like a wind template is what it would use, and it would shoot out a bunch of poison darts. That's kind of like representing this golden blowpipe shooting these out, and it just does a real quick like shot of them. So this way you could sneak up to a front line, get within range, use it, and just shoot down the length of a unit that's lightly armored, and it could really, really decimate them. And I think that's kind of fun here to make this character have a lot more harassment capabilities, rather than just simply being, hey, he's a Lithanar, but we put him into a wood, or I'm sorry, not a wood elf, into a lizardman skin, and he's just shooting down range, stocked. This gives it a little bit more oomph, and we see a lot of evidence of him in the lore as actually a particularly potent hunter. Again, just like a Lithanar, just like any of the other assassin-style characters. he is really good at dealing with stuff. And even kind of his interaction with demons seems to be kind of, it's pretty interesting, right? Like he doesn't necessarily just, oh, hey, yeah, you know, he likes to hunt demons. Like, no, he does a little bit here. So there's a blurb here from the 8th edition called The Long Revenge. At the height of the siege of Oxyotl, Oxyotl left the fighting and made his way to the long corrupted spawning pool, now known as the Pit of Sorrows. There, secreted in the ruins of that once sacred site, he met Tazarariador, the Shimmering, a greater demon of Tzeentch, even as he materialized into the mortal world. It was the greater demon's intention to open a rift, allowing a demon host to lend their weight to the attack against Oxyotl. Yet the greater demon found only death in a hail of barbed darts, and he fell with his vile ritual incomplete. So, I mean, this guy just single-handedly, you know, offs a greater demon. And that's pretty impressive. So I think that his blow dart has to be AP and perhaps anti-large. I'm not really sure if it wants to go down that route, but I think AP has to exist in here, or else it's going to be kind of lackluster, because we have to think of this guy as going up against Taurox in the inevitable quest battle that is the final conclusion of the campaign for either one of these characters. So he has to have a way to fight him. That's kind of the big point of these Lord packs, is they have to exist within a vacuum, and they have to exist within the realm of the Lord pack that they're added into. So he either has to come accompanied by another character that brings anti-large or the ability to fight Taurox toe-to-toe, or Oxyotl needs that ability to do so. So I think that him being on foot is a good option. Him maybe being on a Ripperdactyl or on a Pterodactyl is another good option. But I think too, if they put him on a Oxyotl, as I believe it is called, people have corrected my pronunciation on this, the Oxyotl would give him an ability to possibly fight into Taurox and threaten him a little bit. I think it's going to be really hard to see this single chameleon skink on foot doing much damage to Taurox, and I think it's going to rely mainly on his ability to stay in stealth and do range damage, and that range damage is going to have to be AP as a result. So go ahead and let me know what you think in the comment section about that. I think there's going to have to be some other tricks he has up his sleeve, like maybe an ability that allows him to kind of like flash bomb and go hidden immediately. He's going to need to be able to get in and out of combat. That was his big thing, was being able to shoot. He had 6 ballistic skill, 4 weapon skill, 4 strength, 3 toughness. I mean, 4 weapon skill and 4 strength is decent enough, but I mean, not necessarily for a very strong combatant, especially one that you would want to throw against a Doom Bull, let alone Taurox. So all things to be considered. Now let's talk a little bit about his starting locations and where he could be in both the Vortex campaign and the Mortal Empires map. Now, the conversation of starting locations is going to be kind of a dicey one here. We're going to be using this map, the community created map that has shown us all the starting locations. And this is updated for the last Rakarth FLC. Now, there are a lot of different ways that this could go. And you could say, hey, it could be up here in Aghol Wastelands, but my hypothesis, or my original statement, was that this is where Taurox would probably stand, is up here in the north of the Wastelands. It gives him a lot of really fun options, especially with Rakarth now inhabiting the Albion area. Now, what I think is really hard to kind of peg down is where anything's going to start this late in the game, right? There are so many races all over the place. You're almost always going to be 1 province, if not 2, away from another legendary lord. But I think a good location might be the jungles of Green Mist right here. It's a pretty untouched portion of Lustria. All this land is pretty much all set into 1 province, and it's just one big huge swath. And I think the Jungles of Green Mist is pretty nice because it puts it really close to Pahoalaxa, the location of the city that is a big part of Oxyotl's lore. And he has 2 or 3 actually really solid allies just to the south and then just to the north. So he has a lot of good opportunities to, you know, ally up with people. But then he's got some savage orcs here to the north that he's also probably going to have to deal with Empire. He's going to have dark elves over here in the Dragon Isles, and then he'll have high elves down here to the south for more potential allies, if not enemies. And again, too, Vampire Coast, not too far away up here in the Grey Guardians, or over here on the Vampire Coast actual. Now, Another starting location for Taurox himself could be up here in the Iron Mountains or the Red Desert, which would make the two forces just having to travel south or north towards one another depending upon who it is for the Vortex campaign. So there are a lot of options. I even thought of like maybe the Red Rivers location, but it maybe is just too close to Tic-Tac-Toe. It maybe is too close over here to Queek. There are so many options that are really kind of jammed up, and I think the Jungles of Green Mist is one of the better ones because it's just a little more, I guess, pushed away, and there's not a whole lot around him that isn't a legendary lord, right? Like the Savage Orcs up here and the Dark Elves, that's not bound to a legendary lord. So at least they can have the chance to expand out of that and not be sequestered or hemmed in by so many legendary lords around them. Now, when we take a look at the Mortal Empires map, we have a lot of pretty good options here. I think the Shifting Sands is another really good one. In fact, this whole area is pretty desolate. So I think starting in the Shifting Sands could be great, right? You've got Tic-Tac-Toe to your west. You've got Krok-Gar over here on your east. So there are some options for some allies around you. Even the Tomb Kings could possibly be an option, but then you've got Beastmen to the north. You've got Skaven to the northeast, and of course more Tomb Kings over here in the Devil's Backbone. But remember, with the last DLC, the Wood Elf themed DLC, we got these regions added, and Oxyotl has a ton of play with Chaos. So maybe they would slap him back here behind the World's Edge Mountains, and it would put another hero on this, on this side of the World's Edge Mountains to kind of duke it out with Imrik down here, or that's not Queek Headtaker, with Deathmatcher Snikch. There are some options. And I think with doing this too, it brings a fun kind of gameplay lore aesthetic into this, in that, hey, this is close to the Chaos Wastes. This is a land that Oxyotl would be probably trying to seek some revenge, kill some Chaos inhabitants. And it also depends. With what they've revealed in the actual Steam page of saying Oxyotl can instantly travel between his capital, his unique missionaries, and any secret sanctum he has rediscovered, it might give him a little flexibility to move around the map at a pretty fast rate. I think the big thing though, if he does start at the Shifting Sands or even here at the World's Edge Mountains, and if it's true that Taurox does start in the Agahol Wastelands, it would be a pretty big bummer to try and move all the way over there to deal with it. So my final kind of option here is that the Jungles of the Green Mist is the location he would be on the Mortal Empires map, as well as the Vortex map. So there's a lot to kind of digest with this, and there's a lot of options they could go with, especially since so many places on the map are quite cramped, but so many places are a little removed that it almost is boring to start with. And I think the Jungles of Green Mist is a good place with Mortal Empires, a little bit dodgier with Vortex campaign, but could still serve a good location if they made some very interesting campaign mechanics for Oxyotl. And at that, guys, it brings our video here to a close. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below about what you feel might be the mechanics behind Oxyotl. You know, we know he's going to be getting this Sacred Places mechanic, and how this might actually play itself out. Does he have to go to certain locations to glean more and more information about Chaos, or maybe he has to go and defend these sacred places from Beastmen or Chaos invasions, and as a result, he'll get access to maybe some blessed spawnings or the Oxyotl, some other things that could possibly be very heavy in his actual mechanics. And that's kind of why I said maybe he might be moving around the map a lot with this whole mechanic kind of hinted at on the Steam page. So we'll find out a little bit more. If that's the case, it would make sense, especially if those places point towards Taurox, or Taurox and Oxyotl are either trying to profane those sacred places or protect those sacred places. It'll really kind of come in hopefully the next couple of weeks here as we move closer to July 14th and we get more information about the Silence and the Fury. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that fun action. But have a good one and take care.